Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 8. November 27th, 1927. One who lets herself be dominated by the divine will, by virtue of it, receives the divine fecundity within herself, and can generate in others the good that she contains. What is necessary in order to obtain the kingdom of the divine will? First, to move God. Second, to possess the divine will as one's life. My abandonment in the divine volition is continuous, and even though many times it hides my beloved Jesus from me, my life, my all, and eclipses him, it never hides. Its light is permanent in me. And it seems to me that even if it wanted to hide, it could not, because its light being everywhere, it does not find the point in which to hide, to restrict itself, because it is immense by its own nature. It invests everything. It has primacy over everything, with such empire that I feel it in each fiber of my heart. It flows within my breathing, in everything. And I think to myself that the divine volition loves me more than Jesus himself, because very often he leaves me, while his adorable will never leaves me. Even more, by its own nature, it finds itself in condition of not being able to leave me. And with its empire of light, it dominates me, and triumphant, expects its primacy in all my acts. O divine will, how admirable you are! Your light lets nothing escape it. And caressing and playing with my littleness, you make yourself the conqueror of my little atom, and you delight in dissolving it within the immensity of your endless light. But while I was feeling all immersed in its light, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, one who lets herself be dominated by my divine will, by virtue of it, receives the divine fecundity. And with this fecundity, she can generate in others what she possesses. With this divine fecundity, the soul forms the most beautiful and long generation that will bring her the glory, the cortege, of having many births generated in her very acts. She will see, coming out from within herself, the generation of the children of light, of happiness, of divine sanctity." Oh, how beautiful, holy, and pure is the fecundity of the seed of my divine volition. It is light, and generates light. It is holy, and generates holiness. It is strong, and generates strength. It possesses all goods, and generates peace, joy, and happiness. If you knew what good the fecund seed of this volition, so holy, will bring to you, and then to all, as it knows how to generate, and can generate, in every instant, all the goods it possesses. This is how the height of the sovereign queen was able to generate the eternal word with no one's work. In fact, by not giving life to her human will, she only gave life to the divine will, and by this she acquired the fullness of the seed of the divine fecundity, and was able to generate him whom heaven and earth could not contain. And not only could she generate him within herself, in her maternal womb, but she could generate him in all creatures. How noble and long is the generation of the children of the celestial Queen! She generated every one in that divine fiat that can do anything and encloses everything. So my divine will raises the creature and renders her sharer in the fecundity of the celestial paternity. What power! How many sublime mysteries does it not possess? Then I continued my acts in the divine fiat, and I offered everything in order to obtain its kingdom upon earth. I wanted to invest the whole creation, animate all created things with my voice, so that all of them might say together with me, Fiat voluntas tua, on earth as it is in heaven. Hurry, hurry, let your kingdom come. But while doing this, I thought to myself, how can this kingdom so wholly come upon earth? In creatures there is no change. No one occupies himself with it. Sin and passions abound. How then can this kingdom ever come upon earth? And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, My daughter, what is most necessary in order to obtain a good so great, which is the kingdom of my divine fiat, is to move God to decide to give my divine will reigning in the midst of creatures. When God moves and decides, he overcomes and conquers everything, even evils themselves. The other necessary thing is that the creature who seeks it and prays God to give such a great good must possess within herself the life of the kingdom that she asks for the other creatures. One who possesses it knows the importance of it, and will not spare sacrifices in order to impetrate for others the good that she possesses. She knows the secrets, the ways she must follow. She will make herself importunate in order to conquer God himself. She will be like sun that keeps all the fullness of its light restricted within itself, and, unable to contain it within itself, feels the need to spread it outside, to give light to all and do good to all, so as to render them happy of its own happiness. One who possesses a good possesses the virtue of asking for it and of giving it. The same happened in redemption. Sin was flooding the earth. The very people called the people of God was the smallest people, and if it seemed that it occupied itself with it, it was in a superficial way. In fact, they did not possess within themselves the life of that Redeemer whom they were asking for. It can be said that they occupied themselves just like today, the Church, consecrated people and religious occupy themselves by reciting the Our Father. But the fullness of the life of my will that they ask for in the Our Father is not in them. Therefore, their petition ends up in words, but not in facts. But when the Queen of Heaven came, who possessed the fullness of the divine life, everything she asked for the good of the peoples, moved God, conquered him, made him decide. And in spite of the evils that were present, the eternal Word came upon earth by means of she who already possessed him, as he formed the whole of her life. With the fullness of this divine life, she was able to move God, and so came the good of redemption. What all others together were not able to obtain, she obtained. The sovereign Queen, who had conquered, first within herself, her Creator, and the fullness of all the goods that she was asking for others. And being the conqueror, she had the virtue of being able to impetrate and give the good that she possessed. There is great difference, my daughter, between one who asks and possesses, and one who asks and does not possess the divine life. The first one asks by right. The second does it as alms, and one who asks as alms is given money, lira, at the most, but not entire kingdoms. On the other hand, one who asks by right possesses. She is already the owner, the queen. And one who is queen can be given the kingdom. And because she is queen, she has her divine empire before God to be able to impetrate the kingdom for creatures. So it will happen for the kingdom of my will. Therefore, I so much recommend to you, be attentive. Let it form the fullness of its life in you. In this way, you will be able to move God. And when God moves, no one can resist him. December 1st, 1927. Strength of the Celestial Mama in the privations of Jesus. Strength that the little daughter of his will must have. Power of the acts done in the divine will, how they are the outpouring of God. I was feeling totally without my highest good, Jesus, and as much as I asked for him, I could not manage to find him. So I felt tortured and embittered in an unspeakable way. My words don't have the terms to manifest my sorrow. Therefore I move on. Then, after long days of martyrdom and of abandonment in that divine fiat, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, I want from you the same strength of mind of the celestial sovereign lady, who reached the point of loving the divine will more than the very humanity of her Son, Jesus." How many times the divine will commanded us to separate from each other, and I had to go far away from her, and she had to remain without me, without following me. And she stayed with such strength and peace as to place her very son after the divine Fiat, so much so that the divine Fiat, enraptured by such strength, bilocated the son of my divine will, and while remaining with my mamma, centralized in her, it remained centralized in me. The sun bilocated itself, but the light remained as one, extending, but without ever separating from both centers of the bilocated sun. The sovereign queen had received everything from my will: fullness of grace, sanctity, sovereignty over everything, and even the fecundity to be able to give life to her son. My will had given her everything, and had denied her nothing. So when my will wanted me to go far away, with heroic strength, she would give back to the divine will what she had received. The heavens were stupefied in seeing the strength, the heroism of she, who, yet they knew, loved me more than her very life. So I would like to see the little daughter of my divine will, strong, peaceful, and with heroism, giving your Jesus back to the divine will when it wants you to remain without him. I would rather not see you disheartened, melancholic, but with the strength of the celestial mamma. And just as for the sovereign queen of heaven, the separation was only external and apparent, but internally the divine volition kept us fused together and inseparable. So it will be with you. My volition will keep you fused within me, and we will do the same acts together, without ever separating. After this I continued my acts in the divine Fiat, and feeling that I was not doing them well, I prayed my celestial mamma to come to my help, that I might be able to follow that supreme volition that she had loved so much, and from which she recognized having received all her glory and the height at which she finds herself. But while I was thinking of this, my lovable Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, all the acts of my Queen Mother, done in my will, are all in waiting, for they want the retinue of the acts of the creature done in it. So, in everything you do in my volition, it is these acts that come to your help. Even more, they line up around you to administer to you, some the light, some the grace, some the sanctity, and some the very act that you do, so as to have the retinue of these noble, holy, and divine acts. These acts are the outpouring of God, and as he feeds them to the creature, she is filled so much that, unable to contain them, she pours them out again, and gives her divine acts to her Creator. Therefore, they form the greatest glory that the creature can give to he who created her. There is no good that does not descend through these acts done in the divine volition. They place everything in motion, heavens, earth, and God himself. They are the divine motion of the creature, and it was by virtue of these acts that the celestial sovereign lady made the Word move to descend upon earth. Therefore, she awaits the retinue of her acts, so as to move God to make our supreme will come to reign upon earth. They are the triumph of God over the creature, and the divine weapons with which the creature conquers God. Therefore, continue your acts in my will, and you will have divine helps in your power, as well as those of the Sovereign Queen. December 6, 1927. State of the Soul. How sorrow and bitternesses do not enter the divine will, because they are human births. The Divine Way. How the divine will has its life in the midst of creatures, and how they hamper it. How each act done in it is a divine signature that circulates. Example: I continue in my abandonment in the divine Fiat, and since I was totally without my highest good, Jesus, I felt such bitterness and sorrow that I am unable to express it. But at the same time, I felt imperturbable peace and the happiness of the light of the supreme volition. So I thought to myself, what change in my poor soul! Before, if blessed Jesus deprived me of himself for a little while, even just for hours, I was restless. I raved. I cried. I felt myself the unhappiest of creatures. Now, all the opposite. I am without him, not for hours, but for days. And even though I feel an intense sorrow penetrating deep into the marrow of my bones, yet it is without restlessness, without delirium, without being able to cry, as if I had no more tears. All peaceful, intrepid, and happy. Holy God, what change! At the thought of being happy without Jesus, I feel myself dying. But my happiness is not touched. I feel that happiness leaves sorrow free, and sorrow leaves happiness free. Each of them follows its course, its way, and has its place, but they do not mix together. Ah, Jesus, Jesus, how can you not help me? Don't you have pity on me? How can you not run, not fly to her, the little daughter of your will, whom you said you loved so much? But while I was pouring out my sorrow, he just barely moved in my interior and told me, "Daughter of my will, why do you want to trouble your peace, your happiness? Know that where my will reigns, it is like a noble divine queen. It possesses immense joys and happinesses without end. Sorrow, tears, bitternesses are born in time, all births of the human will. They are not born in eternity, nor are they births from it. They are limited and finite. Therefore they do not have the power to enter, even slightly, into the sea of the happinesses of my divine volition. This is the divine way, and in this state did the Queen of Heaven and my very humanity find themselves. All our sorrows, and they were so many and of all kinds, could not decrease nor penetrate into the summit of our endless joys and happinesses. So, before your restlessness, your tears and disturbances, when you would not see me for a little while, were the remains of your human will. But mine does not admit these weaknesses, and since by nature it does not possess them, wherever it reigns, it dominates sorrow as queen. It makes it circulate, but it does not permit that it enter into its happiness, with which it has filled its creature by reigning in her. Sorrow would not find the place in which to put itself within the endless sea of the happiness of my adorable will. Do you perhaps not want it to reign in you, that you become worried about the change you feel within your soul? My divine will has its life, and when the soul opens the doors of her will to let it enter and dominate, it enters into the soul and carries out its life in her, fully divine. And queen as it is, it forms in her its life of light, of peace, of sanctity, of happiness. And the creature feels all of its goods as her own properties. And if she feels sorrow, she feels it in a divine way that brings no harm to all that my divine will has communicated to her. On the other hand, with one who does not open the doors to it, to let it enter and dominate, its life remains suspended in the creature, hampered, and without being carried out. It happens to my divine Fiat as it could happen to a creature who wants to bring all goods to another creature, and this one, with horrendous ingratitude, binds her feet and her hands in order not to let her get close. She closes her mouth so as not to let her speak. She blindfolds her so as not to be looked at. Reduced to such a state, how can she do to her the good she would want to do, if the other one binds her feet in order not to let her get close, her hands so as not to receive the good that she is bringing to her, her mouth so as not to let her tell what she is bringing, her eyes so as not to be drawn by her gazes to open the door to her? What sorrow would this not be for the bearer of so much good? In this state is my will put by creatures, when they do not open the doors of their will to let it carry out its life. What sorrow, my daughter, what sorrow! After this I continued thinking about the divine will, bearer of so much good, and my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, my love for one who lets my divine Fiat reign and dominate is so great, that for each act she does in it, the divinity surrenders a divine right to the soul, that is, a right of sanctity, of light, of grace, of happiness. And with these rites it binds the soul and renders her the possessor of divine goods. So each additional act done in my divine volition is a signature that is executed by your Creator, as if he were writing for you the deed to render you the owner of his happiness, of his light, his sanctity, and grace. It happens as when a rich man loves a poor lady who never goes out of his house. And if she goes out, it is only to visit the properties of her lord, to bring to her lord the fruits of his farms, so as to render him happy with his very goods. The rich man looks at the poor lady. He becomes fond of her. He sees her happy in his house. But in order to be sure of her happiness, he writes a public deed of donation of his goods to the poor one who has wounded his heart, who remains always in his house, and uses his very goods to make her beloved lord happy. So it is for one who lives in our divine will. She lives in our house. She uses our goods to glorify us and make us happy. The disparity between her and us would cause us pain. It would weigh upon our paternal heart. But since no pains or unhappinesses can enter our divine volition, we act with magnanimity. At each act of hers, we place our signature, writing the deed of donation of our goods to make her happy and rich of our very happiness. This is why I repeat to you often, be attentive, my daughter. Let nothing escape you. Because each of your acts in our will are signatures that circulate, and divine signatures with which it is assured that the divine will is yours, and that you belong to it. Divine bonds never fail. They are eternal bonds. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 8. Fiat.